It's a great honor and a privilege to introduce Professor Jeanne Zaidel Rudolph. We're here in Johannesburg. And Jeanne, if you could tell about your history, where were you born and your education and the amazing achievements that you have achieved.
Sure, thank you. Thank you for interviewing me. I was born in Pretoria. My mother and father were both extremely musical. My father David Zaidel, my mother Evelyn Zaidel. He had a glorious tenor voice, and by the time I was 5, I realized that music was going to, in fact much earlier even, I realized music was going to be my life and my career. And I went to primary school, Arcadia Primary, and then to Pretoria Girls High, where I was actually the first Jewish ever head girl of the school. And it was the most wonderful school, a real sort of old English type, wonderful traditions and wonderful ethics and all that. And then after school, I enrolled at Pretoria University, where I started studying for my bachelor's, BMAS. After my BMAS, I enrolled for my master's, my MMAS. But during this time, I actually went to the Royal College of Music in London, and I studied at the Royal College with a very famous piano professor, John Lill, and also composition professor. So I did electronic music, composing, piano at the Royal College of Music, and then I had the most incredible skut of meeting George Ligeti, the famous Hungarian Jewish composer, who was giving a concert of his music at the Royal Festival Hall. So while I was a student in London, I went backstage and I met Ligeti, and I very tentatively asked him if he would even consider having me as a student in Germany. And 3 weeks later, I left London and I went to Hamburg. And I studied music at the Hochschule für Musik und Darstellende Kunst, which means the School for Music and Allied Arts. Studied in Hamburg with him for a year, also traveled to Vienna and studied with him there. And then I came back to Pretoria University, and somewhere along the line I married my husband Michael in 1976. And we actually went to Boston together, where Michael was doing his Masters of Public Health. And that's when I started preparing for my PhD. It was actually a DMUS at the time, which was more of a professional music doctorate. And when we came back from Boston, where we lived for a year, a little bit over a year, I went back to Pretoria University, and I eventually got my doctorate in music composition, in original composition. Subsequent to that, actually in 2008, I was awarded an honorary doctorate in education. So I do have 2 doctorates, which I'm very proud of. And I'm also proud of having put a number of doctorates through Wits University. I started lecturing at Wits in the early years, in fact 1976. Before I got married, I started lecturing at Wits. And I'm now in my 43rd year of lecturing at Wits as Professor of Composition. But I am now Professor Emeritus because one is not able to have a permanent full-time post. But after 2013, I actually continued supervising PhD students. And I'm very proud to say that I've put through a couple of really good PhD students who have graduated. In fact, my most recent graduate is a young man called Nchingazendi Nechivambi from Venda, who came as a young student of Wits, first year, who could hardly speak English, and I took him through his 4 years of bachelor's. I encouraged him to do composition as a major. I organized scholarships and bursaries for him because he was came from a very, very poor and underprivileged background. And then he did his master's, and now he has completed his 4 to 5 years of PhD and just graduated this week at Wits University. So I'm terribly proud of him.
That's
Yes,
amazing.
he's actually the first black graduate in music composition in South Africa. There have been one or two graduates who have graduated outside of South Africa, but he's the first one in South Africa. And I've really had a wonderful career teaching, lecturing, and composing. In fact, 2 of my very recent piano works are going to be premiered in January at UNISA for the UNISA International Piano Competition. So the contestants who are coming to South Africa to compete in the piano competition will have as their South African works of choice 2 piano works that I've composed, and I'm very much looking forward to hearing that. So I
Ask you, what advice would you give for aspiring students who want to go into the music profession?
Well, you know, you've got to love music with such a passion and not want to do anything else. And it's got to be in your DNA. It's got to be in your cells. And I knew from very, very young age. I was playing the piano from the age of 5 and competing in competitions in Estetwitz from the age of 6. So you know, it's from childhood. You know, if you want to just enjoy music, you can start at the age of 12 and 13, but competitively, you actually have to start very young.
And did you come from a very musical family?
I did indeed.
Your parents?
Absolutely. My father had a glorious tenor voice. He used to sing in operettas. In fact, he took the lead in an operetta called Shulamet in Pretoria, which was a Yiddish operetta. And he had a glorious tenor voice. And my mother was an exceptionally good pianist. I studied piano as a child with my aunt, Goldie Zaidel in Pretoria. So I come from a very musical family. And of course, my brother Malcolm, my late brother, played the guitar. He sang beautifully. We always called him the singing dentist.
And he was the choir master.
The choir master of Sydenham Highlands North Shore. He trained them. We did CDs together. We travelled overseas together. And we were a very music-making family. Our Sundays were not going out days. They were staying in days, recording music. I have reams of reels, of reel-to-reel, from the old sort of reel-to-reel tape recorders, which I've had converted into CDs. I've got lots of those, yeah.
Well, you are an inspiration for all of us, someone we can all strive to emulate.
Thank
and
you.
your stories, it's remarkable, it's incredible. May you continue
Thank you.
in your musical path and to inspire people, which you continue. Everybody who hears the anthem,
Thank you.
it really affects the soul.
I've been very
special.
blessed, I have to say, because a life in music, there is nothing more glorious or spiritual or exciting than a life in music. I've been incredibly blessed, and I'm most grateful for that. Yeah.
Well, thank you very, very much.
Okay.